My name is Natalie Carter, and I'm 32 years old. 2 weeks before Christmas, I came home after working a 14-hour shift at the Children's Hospital, exhausted and dreaming of nothing more than my own bed. Instead, I found my bedroom door wide open, every photo missing from the walls, my clothes stuffed into cardboard boxes, and my younger sister, Chloe, sitting on my bed scrolling through her phone like she'd lived there her whole life. My mother smiled as if this were completely normal and said, "We gave Chloe your room. You're only here temporarily anyway." I stood there speechless. I'd moved back home 6 months earlier, after selling my apartment to help pay for my father's heart surgery. I wasn't freeloading. I was paying half the household bills, buying groceries every week, and working overtime to keep everyone afloat. Chloe, meanwhile, had quit her job for the third time in 2 years because, according to my parents, she needed time to find herself. Somehow, the responsible daughter was sleeping on a folding couch in the basement, while the favorite daughter got the biggest bedroom in the house. I wanted to argue, but I looked at my father, expecting him to say something. He simply looked away. That hurt more than anything. My grandmother, Evelyn, had always warned me not to confuse kindness with being taken for granted. Before she passed away 8 months earlier, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "One day, they'll show you exactly who they are. When they do, don't beg them to treat you better." At the time, I didn't understand what she meant. I did that evening. I spent the next 12 nights sleeping on a narrow, folding couch under a leaking basement window while Chloe redecorated my old room with new paint, fairy lights, and furniture my parents bought for her. Every night, I told myself it was temporary. Every morning, I woke up feeling less like a daughter and more like a guest in the house I'd spent years helping maintain. Then, 3 days before Christmas, an unexpected phone call changed everything. The caller introduced himself as Michael Hayes, my grandmother's attorney. His first sentence made my heart stop. "Natalie, your grandmother instructed me to open her private safe only if your parents ever gave your place in the family to someone else." The next morning, I drove straight to Michael Hayes' law office. It was an old brick building my grandmother had visited for years, but I'd never been inside. Michael greeted me warmly and led me into a conference room where a small steel safe sat on the table. "This," he said, placing a key beside it, "was your grandmother's private safe. She instructed me never to open it unless one specific condition was met." I swallowed hard. "What condition?" He looked directly at me. "If your parents ever treated you like you no longer had a place in their home." I felt a chill run through my body. He unlocked the safe. Inside were 3 things: a handwritten letter, a thick folder of legal documents, and a small velvet pouch containing another key. Michael handed me the letter first. "My dearest Natalie, if you're reading this, then your parents have done exactly what I feared. They chose convenience over fairness and rewarded the child, who demanded the most while overlooking the one who gave the most." My eyes filled with tears. She knew. Years before it happened, she knew. The letter continued. "You were never the loudest person in this family. You were simply the one who quietly solved everyone else's problems. People like that are often forgotten until they're gone." Every sentence felt painfully accurate. Grandma wrote about the weekends I'd spent repairing her house, taking her to doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, and helping her after Grandpa passed away. Then she wrote something that made my heart race. I promised myself that the one grandchild who never asked me for money would never be left with nothing. Michael slowly slid the legal folder toward me. Inside was the deed to Grandma's lake house, a trust worth nearly $650,000, and one additional document that made me stop breathing for a moment. It showed that Grandma still owned 40% of my parents' house. Years earlier, she'd quietly paid off the remaining mortgage after my father nearly lost the property during financial trouble. Instead of gifting the money, she had legally secured a partial ownership, share to protect the house if the family ever turned against one another. My parents had never mentioned it, Michael quietly explained. They believed your grandmother simply helped with the mortgage. They never realized she insisted on becoming a legal co-owner. Then he handed me the final envelope. Across the front, in Grandma's handwriting, were the words, "Open this only in front of your parents." I stared at it. "What is it?" Michael smiled slightly. "I've never read it. Your grandmother sealed it herself. She only said one thing: when Natalie no longer has a bedroom in that house, it's time everyone learns who really protected this family." That evening, I drove back to my parents' house with the sealed envelope resting on the passenger seat beside me. Through the living room window, I could see Christmas lights glowing. And my little sister laughing inside my old bedroom. I stood at the front door for nearly a minute before knocking. My mother opened it, and the smile on her face disappeared the second she saw me. Natalie, we're in the middle of decorating. Can this wait? I calmly held up the sealed envelope. No. Grandma said this had to be opened in front of everyone. The mention of Grandma's name caught everyone's attention. My father stepped into the hallway. Chloe walked downstairs, annoyed. What now? She muttered. I walked into the living room and placed the envelope on the coffee table. Across the front, in Grandma Evelyn's familiar handwriting, were the words, "To be opened only if Natalie ever loses her place in this home." The room became silent. My father's hands trembled as he slowly broke the seal. Inside was another handwritten letter. He began reading aloud. Richard, if you're opening this letter, then you ignored the promise you made me. He stopped for a second. My mother whispered, "What promise?" He didn't answer. Instead, he continued reading. The day you accepted my money to save this house, you looked me in the eyes and promised Natalie would always have a home here, no matter what happened. My father's face turned completely white. No one else had known about that promise. Grandma continued. If Natalie is standing in this room without a bedroom while someone else sleeps in hers, then you have broken your word. My mother slowly looked at my father. You never told me that. He couldn't even meet her eyes. Then came the final page. Since my promise was broken, my attorney has already transferred my 40% ownership of this house to Natalie. Effective immediately, she becomes the largest individual owner of this property. Chloe jumped to her feet. What? That's impossible. I quietly pulled the legal documents from my bag and placed them beside the letter. Michael Hayes had prepared everything. Every signature, every property record, every ownership transfer. It was all legal. My father looked like he might collapse. My mother grabbed the paperwork with shaking hands. You own 40%? I calmly corrected her. No, I own 40%. Grandma owned 40. Dad owns 30. You own 30. So technically, I looked around the room. I'm now the largest owner of this house. The silence was overwhelming. Then Chloe pointed toward my old bedroom. So, what does that mean? I looked directly at her. It means Grandma never intended for me to lose my place. And starting tonight, I'm taking my bedroom back. For the first time since I'd walked through the front door, no one argued. For a long moment, no one said anything. My mother was the first to break the silence. Natalie, we didn't know your grandmother had done this. I looked at her calmly. No, you just knew I was the easiest one to disappoint. Those words hit harder than any argument ever could. My father slowly sat down, still holding Grandma's letter. I failed you, he admitted quietly. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that giving Chloe your room would keep the peace. I nodded. It did. It kept her peace. It destroyed mine. Chloe suddenly stood up. So you're seriously making this into a legal issue over a bedroom? I looked at her. This was never about a bedroom. It was about respect. You took my room because Mom and Dad gave it to you. They treated me like I didn't belong. And you never once asked if I was okay. For the first time, Chloe had nothing to say. I picked up the house key Grandma had left in the velvet pouch. Michael had already explained what it opened. It wasn't a safe. It was the storage room beside the garage. The room everyone thought was filled with old furniture. Instead, it contained dozens of neatly labeled boxes. Family photo albums, Grandpa's journals, property records, and one final video message Grandma had recorded a few months before she passed away. We watched it together that evening. Grandma smiled into the camera. If you're watching this, then Natalie finally learned something. I spent years trying to teach her. She paused. The kindest person in a family is usually the one everyone expects to sacrifice. But kindness should never cost you your place in your own home. Then she looked directly into the camera. Richard, Colleen, if Natalie ever loses her bedroom because someone else's comfort mattered more, then you stopped acting like parents. The room fell completely silent. Even Chloe was crying now. A week later, I moved back into my bedroom. Not because I demanded it. Because no one could look at Grandma's letter and pretend I didn't deserve it. Chloe moved into the guest room without complaining. My parents apologized again and again. This time I believed they meant it. But forgiveness didn't erase what happened. It simply gave us a chance to rebuild something honest. 6 months later, my father transferred his share of the house equally between Chloe and me, saying he never wanted favoritism to divide the family again. Every Christmas since then, one tradition has never changed. Before dinner, we leave one empty chair at the table. Not because someone is missing, but because Grandma taught us that every person deserves a place in the family. And no one should ever have to wonder whether that place still belongs to them.